We welcome you to the Priscilla R. Tyson Cultural Arts Center for our conversations and coffee on this 30th day of the month of October 2025. I'm Ellen O'Shaughnessy, coordinator of the program. We are delighted to have with us today artist Jill Parak, celebrating the art of flower gardening, a master gardener as she is. Welcome, Jill. Want to stand up there so we celebrate? Stand up there. Yay. Oh, it's so beautiful. Now, yeah, you can stand right next to me here then. Okay. Um, we are celebrating being nourished by this beauty and by the rainfall, too, huh? Jill's originally from suburban Detroit, but she's lived in Worthington for about 20 years, huh? With her husband, Ryan. Together, they have a 10-year-old daughter, Elena. Jill went to Wayne State University for her undergrad education. She began her nursing career in the ER. Wow, that's the emergency, living always on the tip of it, huh? And working in Detroit and then Columbus. She continued her education at The Ohio State University, becoming a family nurse practitioner in 2007. She now works part time for Kenyon College and Premise Health. Outside of work, her husband calls her a professional volunteer. And when Jill isn't volunteering, she loves doing anything outdoors from hiking to gardening. From observing what is happening in her own yard to growing flowers to share with others, to inviting neighborhood kids over to pick raspberries, to discovering hummingbird nests in her front yard, she's gained an appreciation and wonder for all that surrounds her. Her desire to learn more led her to apply to the OSU Extension Master Gardener Volunteer Program, which she completed in 2022. After complaining about weeding her parents' gardening as her kid, she now finds much of her free time is spent in the garden. What a great legacy, huh? As tough as it was at the time, huh? She leads Bouquet Buffet, events for Kenyon College students, does school gardening programming with fifth grade students at Worthington Estates Elementary, is part of a team that writes monthly native plant articles for the Columbus Dispatch, and is a master gardener volunteer liaison to the Worthington Community Garden. And Jill, what's your favorite flower?
Although it's really hard to decide, it's probably a dahlia.
Dahlia. Is there a dahlia among the flowers?
There is one.
Ah,
There's not a whole lot left this time of year, but this little guy right here,
oh, isn't that wonderful?
it's called Pooh, like Winnie the Pooh.
Oh, your favorite. Well, we're so happy to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome. Bravo. All right.
Yay.
Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for coming today. I'm going to share with you a little bit about flower gardening. And you heard about me. I'm a master gardener volunteer. I've been growing flowers for probably about 20 years now. It's hard to know how I got started on it. I had a few neighbors who really are amazing gardeners, and they started sharing plants with me, and I started planting those plants. And then the next thing you knew, I was planning to get married, and I was like, well, I'll just grow all the flowers for my wedding. So then we had to remove grass, make a big garden, grow tons of flowers, and take a big U-Haul to Indiana for our wedding with all the flowers for it. So That really, I think, started my passion for it. And once you get started, like a lot of things, you don't have that color or you don't have that form of this flower, and you just continue to acquire more and more. And in the midst of that, you share a lot of the knowledge that you learn and a lot of the seeds and a lot of the plants with everyone around you. And so then it just keeps growing. I think most of the fun of gardening is sharing. So if you're planning to grow things, or maybe you don't grow things, what are your goals? Do you want to cut flowers to make arrangements or just have, a nice bouquet on your table? Do you prefer to grow things that maybe are a little less labor intensive and you just want to have pretty flowers outside of your yard that are perennials that'll come back year after year and they won't be a whole lot of work? So perennials or natives are probably in that category. A lot of the cut flowers are annuals, so you have to plant the seed each year, or you plant them by their root, which for dahlias, that's a tuber. So you can plant that and then pull it out at the end of the season and store it for next year. Or maybe you have a theme like you lost somebody close to you and you want to have a memorial garden for that person. So maybe that person's favorite color was purple. And so you have a purple garden. So you can just think of any reason for it, and sometimes it helps to have the theme so you know where you're going. And then the next thing you need to think about is what kind of area do you have? Do you have maybe an apartment and you just have a little um, porch where you can put a pot? So that can help you determine what you want to plant. Or maybe you've built some raised beds or somebody gave you some raised beds that they're not using anymore. Or maybe you took a rototill and got rid of a bunch of grass and just made a big garden in your yard. Um, but you can do it all the ways. Then the next thing you need to know about is how much sun exposure do you have? Because based on the weather patterns and the sun exposure, that will tell you what sort of things you can plant, because some things need shade, some things need sun, some things can go either way in between.
Is there a difference between partial sun or partial shade?
It's the same way of saying the same thing, a different way of saying the same thing. Yeah. I haven't found it to make much difference when I'm planting it. Yeah. Sometimes sometimes things don't like, even though it says full sun, but if they're getting beat on with western sun at the end of the day, they might actually do better in part sun. But that is part of the experience of gardening, I think, is figuring out those little changes that you would notice as you grow for a season and think, well, maybe I'll try that over here and let's see how it does this year in this space. So, in talking about annuals or cut flowers, which is a good amount of the things that I grow, um, what do you like to look at? Does anyone have a favorite color of flower they like to see? Or just anything?
My favorites are the roses and the sunflowers and the also the lilies and the
All of them. That's a wide variety, but there's so much out there. So, whatever speaks to you is what you can grow. So this list up here are some of the flowers that I tend to grow in my yard. Zinnias are really lovely. They come in all different varieties. They have a really long vase life too. So, I mean, they can last well over a week in a vase, which is nice. Some flowers don't quite last that long in vases, like dahlias. They tend to maybe 5 days is probably about the time that they would last in a vase. Yes, Carolyn.
So, Alebra's zinnias, they haven't grown them, and how now do you get the seeds?
So that is a great question. Um, let's.
Repeat that question.
So Carolyn asked, her neighbor grows zinnias, and she's wondering because she's never planted them before, how would you acquire seeds? So when zinnias are done blooming, and if they haven't been deadheaded, like she hasn't removed or he hasn't removed the heads from the spent flowers, there will be seeds that are created in that flower head. And if you pull out a petal, the seed is usually connected to the bottom of the petal. Like a marigold, exactly. And so if you can, remove the petal portion and just keep that seed, it's a little denser and heavier, and you'll be able to tell what the difference is and save that in a dry place, dry, cool place over the winter time. You can put it in the ground next year. Yeah, which is a nice way because once you start growing flowers, you don't necessarily need to buy seeds again once you figure out how to save the seeds. So it's a nice low cost way of having a lot of variety. And those are some of the examples of some dahlias that I grew over the years. They really are a magnet for butterflies too. I see monarchs, swallowtail butterflies, hummingbirds even visit them from time to time. So they really are pretty. And they have quite a bit of variety too. They can grow sort of low to the ground, but if you don't trim them, they will be. A lot of them I'm like reaching up to cut them this time of year because they get really big and bushy, which is fun. So if you do deadhead, that can send some of the energy to produce new blooms. But then sometimes it's nice to leave some of those flowers if you want to collect for seeding. But they do really well in full sun. They do like well-drained soil. Most flowers and plants will grow better if there's some nice compost in your soil. Usually I just rake all my maple leaves and just put them in the garden all winter long, and it'll end up being like 2 feet tall. But by the time everything sort of compacts down and decays over the winter time, you just work that in a little bit, and I don't really add any other things other than that. Make some nice, good organic compost, and it's a free resource because it comes from your trees. Yeah.
So, how do you know if it's a well-drained soil area?
So if the water doesn't just sit there after a big rain, that's usually how you know. So if you can sort of picture what your yard looks like after a big rain and sort of notice where the water just kind of hangs out and takes a couple of days to drain away, that's generally well-drained soil. Say that again.
Just like Themius.
Oh, yes. Goldfinches do. Yeah, good point. I've seen sparrows out there too, actually. But yeah, goldfinches definitely do. They like picking out the seeds too, I think. If you leave the seed heads, you can feed the wildlife around you too, which is also a really nice thing to do. Deer don't tend to eat them usually, so that can be helpful if you live in an area with a lot of deer. The next one we'll talk about is cosmos. They come in a wide variety of colors too. These pink and white ones I think are really beautiful, but they come in yellows and orange and pinks and whites. They are actually quite easy to grow. I acquired a little garden plot at the Worthington Community Garden, and somebody years prior grew cosmos, and they just their seeds fall, and then the next thing you know, there's a whole blanket of new cosmos growing. So they don't take a lot of work, and the seeds don't mind hanging out on top of the soil over the winter time. So if you have kind of a wild area, it's really nice to just throw something like that in there. The deer don't eat those either. They're usually covered in butterflies.
Yeah, those are for hummingbirds as well, correct?
Yeah.
Because I had bought in a hummingbird mix, garden mix.
Yeah.
In my mom's garden.
Did a lot of cosmos grow out of that one?
They were 10 feet tall.
Yeah, they can get really big. I love how they're so, like the wind blows and they just have this gentle sway. Yeah, it looks like they're almost always in motion,
Yes.
which is kind of neat. Yeah. The next one we'll talk about is celosia, which, if you look on the table over here, there are lots of different types of celosia. Some of them look like massive coral heads or brains. Some of them are very wispy and tall, but they have a lot of variety too. And these are very. Yeah, they're over there on the table. Yeah, if you come over here, these are a type of celosia. So are these guys. And over here, there's kind of a variety of color too. And then over here is another type of celosia. Yeah.
What that morning I did,
That one or the big one or this one?
The one in the middle is a dahlia.
Oh, right here. Yeah, coxcomb is a common name for celosia. Yep. Yeah. Yes.
Now, what's that one there that's
These are all different varieties of celosia. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It's a little non-traditional for a flower look, I think, because there's not that center, there isn't petals. It's just very interesting to look at. Kind of fun to pet. It's furry.
Does that a seed start as well? Is there a seed in those?
Yes, if you notice on this table, there are these little black dots all over around here, and those are seeds that are falling out of the bottom. And I'll show you a little bit more toward the end, but they're very easy to grow again. And one plant will probably produce like 50 seeds. So you could have celosia for ages.
Are they annual as well?
They are, yeah.
Some.
They do like a lot of sun, and they'll reseed themselves too. Yeah.
And you just picked these and said because
I
there
did.
has been no real frost, you
Yes.
still have them.
Where my gardens are, there has not been a hard frost. So I was
Getting
able,
ready for
I
the
really was,
conversation and coffee.
I know, I was really wondering if I was going to bring flowers, but yeah, that Mother Nature was on our side. Yes.
I think it was to my Mother's Day when my mom was up to, and I was just going back to Kirkham and I was just buying it myself.
Oh, yeah.
It's feeling no surprising. I mean, to get a nice patriotic red, white, and blue only.
Oh, nice.
Working at a garden during spring, summer,
Yeah.
To when it feels good. Flowers are growing every other week ago.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
These I have found that deer do like to nip at a little bit. So if you have a lot of deer in your yard, that can happen. I do tend to keep these in my garden fenced area. Yeah. And my favorite one, the dahlias, they are definitely a labor of love if you want to keep them from year after year. The variety is very interesting because they have all different sorts of colors and forms and shapes. And if you want exactly a certain color, form, and shape, and you buy that tuber, it comes with a root. And you plant that root, and then a plant will grow out of it. And then you will get the exact flower that the root is from the parent plant. But you can also plant them by seed, and the seeds are not an exact replica of the parent plant. So it could come out looking any kind of way if you plant it by seed, which is an interesting thing about these flowers. Butterflies, hummingbirds like to visit these flowers. They just really are beautiful, and there's so many different color and variety, which I think is why I like them so much. But I usually put my tubers in the ground in the springtime, and then it's like a single tuber. It kind of looks like a potato. And then when I pull them out at the end of the season, it's just this giant mass of tubers. And so you can split them up and store them over the winter time. Usually I store them in my garage, and I like layer them like a lasagna of dahlia tubers and cedar shavings and cinnamon, because cinnamon can help prevent some mold from growing in there. And I've had a lot of luck with that method. And then I just pull them out the next year and start all over again. And I end up with, if I had about 100 plants, I'll probably end up with like 300 the next year. So if anyone needs dahlias next year, reach out to me. I'm happy to share. Usually I'm like, who wants dahlias? I'm happy to give dahlias to everybody.
You know what's the dahlia I get for those who came in a little later?
We do have just one dahlia here today. They're getting toward the end of their season. This is a little guy, but it's quite pretty.
So do you grow the gamble?
Canna lilies? I do. I didn't feature them in this presentation, but yes, they are so lovely. I do really like their foliage is just as pretty as the flowers, and hummingbirds love them. Yeah. So they're stored in containers along with the dahlia tubers. Sunflowers are also a really nice thing to grow. The birds love them. They'll be, I walk up to my garden plot and you just see like this big flock of birds fly away because they really just love the seeds. You can dry the seeds to plant for next year. You can save them for bird seed, or even just when you're done with them and they're flopping over because they're so big and heavy, you can just cut the heads off and just leave them there, and the birds will, and the little critters will enjoy them. But they really are beautiful in a vase too. They do tend to drop a bit of pollen everywhere if you have them. Yeah.
That one on this end, the yellow,
Yeah.
that's the same as that made.
That one right there. It does look a lot like it, doesn't it? It's a totally different flower, but it has very similar coloring. Yeah. Marigolds is another one that I enjoy growing, especially the tall ones. I think historically it can be a way to keep rabbits away. I don't know if that really works, but they do have a very distinctive scent. And they're beautiful in the fall. It's a nice, vibrant orange color around all the other deeper fuchsia, darker colors that tend to grow this time of year. They generally aren't browsed by much. I don't think other animals really enjoy eating them very much, so it is a flower that you don't have to worry about with deer browsing. And then here I just have some sources for flower seeds if you are just getting started and you want to know what some good sources are for seeds. I've had a lot of good luck with Renee's Garden, which I just order online, or Floret Flower Farm. She has a lot of really nice seeds, although she's taking a little bit of a break from providing all the types of seeds that she used to. Seed Saver Exchange is another one. And then you can also look at your local places like Sunny Meadows Flower Farm grows and sells their tubers for dahlias. And then the Columbus has a Dahlia Society, and every year they have both a tuber sale and a plant sale. So, it's just people around you that end up like me with 300 plus dahlia tubers, and they're like, what do I do with these? So they sell them usually for a very reasonable cost versus a lot of the online sources, just, to raise money for their group. So that's a nice option. Usually they have this sale at maybe it's Carsoni's up on Polaris, but they have a website you could check out. And then moving away from cut flowers, if you are interested in growing more perennials or native plants, I tried to focus on ones that don't tend to be browsed by deer because it's such a problem where I live in Worthington. We have a very big deer herd. But it's nice to have shade or partial shade options, and then sun and partial sun options. Here are a couple options for like a shady or just a very partially sunny area. These are both spring blooming, and they have some nice foliage, and the foliage stays around all year unless the deer get super hungry in the fall and they just literally eat everything in your yard, which happens sometimes to these at the end of the season. They are not native here. They are native to Europe, so it's not a native perennial, but they're still quite beautiful. And then here's another option. If you ever go hiking in the springtime, a lot of times along hiking trails, you'll see these plants. Dutchman's breeches is the common name for it. They're cute little, it almost looks like pants hanging on a line in the springtime, like little breeches. And then the non-native version from Asia is the bleeding heart. And those are quite pretty. And they really thrive in like shady to part shade areas. And generally, deer leave them alone. So that's also really nice. Here's another option. The foliage is just as beautiful as the little tiny little bell-shaped flowers underneath. It's called Solomon Seal. And here's another one that does well. I think it lists full to partial sun, but I actually have these in like mostly shade and they still do lovely. They're so pretty. It's a nice spring blooming flower. And there's also a copper colored version of this as well.
What flowers bloom all summer?
All summer. There are some that do. Geraniums. A lot of the annuals will. Petunias. Impatiens. Yep. Zinnias, you can't really put them in the ground until May, so it takes them a while to bloom, but all these cut ones will bloom until it frosts. So they start a little later, like usually probably mid-June or so, and then they'll go until it frosts. So there's not a lot of things that bloom from like spring all the way through fall. But it is nice to have a variety of things. And if you have some space in your yard to have things that bloom in the spring, things that bloom most of the summer, and things that come out in the fall. So there's always pollen available for the birds and the butterflies and all that. And it's just neat to have some interest year round. These are a couple options that are native to this area. A purple echinacea and the gray-headed coneflower. Those will actually reseed themselves a little bit, particularly the yellow one. They don't tend to be eaten very often, but sometimes they do if you have a lot of deer. But they really are pretty, and they're usually midsummer, like June to July. This is kind of a neat one. It's called obedient plant, which I find really funny because it really does spread. It doesn't really tend to stay where you put it. However, they're very easy to just pull out. If you want to keep them in an area, you just pull them out and they're not very difficult to get rid of. But they are pretty and they bloom quite late, usually sometimes in August, but sometimes they don't bloom till September or so, depending on how much sunshine they get. So it's a nice option to have for some of the later butterflies that are still around. Yeah. And they come in like a white and a pink and a purple, I've seen. I have the purple ones at my house. There's been a lot of talk about deer. That's because I live in Worthington, and a lot of places around here just have a large, hungry herd. And so, you know, it's a blessing and a curse at the same time. They are pretty. It's neat to see them. You get to see babies born in your yard, and then the whole cycle just starts over again. But there are some resources for finding things that are mostly deer resistant, but I found that oftentimes either it is deer food or it will be deer food. Because sometimes they're just hungry and thirsty, and so they look for anything that they can get moisture or food from. So yeah, you kind of have to know what your tolerance level is. Do you need to build a fence? Do you have the patience and consistency to spray with like 2 different sprays after it rains several times a week? I don't have that at all. I have a lot of things, so they eat some things and they don't eat other things, and it is what it is. Plant some things for me, plant some things for the wildlife.
Well, we take their habitats and now they need to.
Exactly. I know. It's true.
As we shared with you, Jill, we have 2 baby deer born 2 doors down, and they have just, I don't know, it feels like they're part of our family. You know, one of them got under the bush in the front of our house, and we were worried, where was the mother? Well, we called Worthington, and they said, the mother needs a break.
Yes.
So
Mothers do
we
need
stayed
breaks.
right with us and have enjoyed the flowers. The flowers we don't want them to eat. We just spray, but we leave the rest of them
Yeah.
for them because
Yes.
they got to find something to eat,
They
right?
do. And they live right along with us.
Yes.
Yeah. Very true. So one thing we haven't talked about, maybe we touched on a little bit earlier, but a healthy soil will grow things, and it's nice to kind of rotate your crops and things around so all of the nutrients are not absorbed by one crop year after year. If you shift things around, different plants take different things from the soil, so that can be a way to prevent your soil from getting leached of nutrients. Adding organic compost is a great way of doing that. In my case, I just dump a bunch of leaves in my garden and let them decompose, and that creates a nice, fertile soil. The Ohio State College of Agriculture, you can actually send a soil sample and they will let you know what your soil needs, if it needs nitrogen or potassium or any of the other micronutrients. And it's a pretty small fee. So if you're interested in doing that, usually fall, like right around now, is a great time to do that. Because then if you need to add things for the next growing season, it can sit and do its thing all winter long.
What about raking leaves? That's a
Mhm.
question of taking them away and then depriving the soil.
Where
do you
from where
look-
they fall, you
How do you
mean?
look at that? How do you regard that?
In my case, there's always some leaves that stay on the grass or in the landscape beds areas. But I figure I'm not taking them that far away. I'm just moving them to my backyard. And so if I was gonna rake them to the curb and have the city take them, they're using them for compost in another place too. So I'll just rake them into my garden. I fill up all my garden beds with the leaves, and there are a certain amount that are going to blow away or do their thing. And there's a certain amount you can leave on your grass too and just mulch in and use that for fertilizer on your grass as well. So some people like a very manicured green lawn without any leaves, and some people like to leave things a little more natural. And there's usually a lot of benefit to doing that. And insects. Thank you for bringing that up because a lot of insects overwinter in the leaf debris. And so that's leaving them where they are. So you actually will have the butterflies and the birds and all the things that spend time in that area in the wintertime. And even just like taking your, branches that fall in the yard and making a little branch pile in the back corner. There are probably going to be other critters that are going to use that space over the winter time. Do you have something to add back there?
Yeah, I was going to say it took me a long time to learn this, but if you want butterflies and moths and insects in your garden, you need a host plant and a nectar plant.
Yeah.
And for many years, I only got one of them, and it doesn't support. So there's the one that they will beat, and then there's the one that they lay your eggs on. So that's always there. Good arrow to vote. Yeah.
So you have all those nice nectar sources and food sources for when they're alive and going through their different stages of life. And then the plant that they lay their eggs on. Yeah.
What's the host plant? What is that, Isa?
It could be anything. The oak tree is a host plant for like hundreds of different insects. Different milkweeds are host plants for various butterflies and moths. So swamp milkweed, common milkweed. I have a book up here if you want to take a look at later, and it talks about host plants.
And I'm hearing that milkweed will take care of our little real friend, the lantern fly. Is that correct?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And wasps eat them when you're dead.
Oh, good. Those things really jump. Have you guys tried to stomp on those spotted lantern flies? Yeah. They like,
When you go to stop again, they're just out of reach.
uh-huh. They are beautiful.
Water is a bottle. You can actually get them to drop in the bottle. I put them in my fridge to make them go to sleep. So that then I can swish them.
That's commitment, Carolyn.
And or you know.
There's some other things too that you can do. There's Price Farms in Delaware makes what they call zoo brew, which is they're using all the excrement from our zoo animals and they add it with other things and it creates this giant hot steaming pile of composted fertilizer you can add to your garden. We do get that at our community garden each springtime. So it's a nice organic matter to add. Sometimes throughout the year, maybe once or twice, I will add a little bit of fertilizer onto my flowers. And then if you're looking for some places to obtain some of these flowers, there's a lot of great resources for native flowers here. Even some little places like Linworth High School, they actually grow native plants and they have a sale usually at the Worthington Farmers Market, like I think it's the first or second weekend of May. And they'll sell them for like a couple dollars each. It's so affordable if you don't feel like starting seeds on your own and, you know, letting them percolate over the winter time and all that.
At Sayotip Gardens, last day is Sunday.
Ooh, that's good to know.
Still
Yeah, they have a newer location now too. They shifted over this year. It's beautiful. I actually just went a couple weeks ago and got a few.
This is having a bad night. I think it's Saturday.
Oh, cool. Bats are also really good to have around. Take care of those mosquitoes for us. And then I just listed some local nurseries here. If you've never been to Baker's Acres or Groovy,
Go, we have bingo on Sundays at the Lothian.
ooh, Sunday bingo at Baker's Acres. They always have great music playing, and it's a joy to go there. It's like a field trip for me, a field trip for grown-ups. It's not that far, but it's a great place. And then this is talking a little bit about seed saving. It's a cool little process once you figure it out. Floret Flower Farm has some videos that you can access and they're all free. You just have to like sign up and put your email address and they'll send you those videos. But they teach you how to save your seeds. And probably the basics are just collecting those dead seed heads, put them in a place where they can dry out and they won't be moist. And then the whole goal is to separate the actual seed from all that extra little fluffy stuff. And then you'll end up with nice seed for next year. Store it in a cool, dry place, and then you have your flowers for next year.
Should they be in plastic? You had yours up here.
I had them all in bowls at home. I just kind of stuffed them in some plastic bags to make the transport easier. But I do have envelopes that we can put seeds in to take with us today.
So does it need to be a dark area as well to get like a hibernation or?
I haven't found that to be true. I mean, usually they're in some sort of paper envelope is how I've stored mine. And it's in a room that sometimes is lit up and sometimes isn't. And I've had pretty good results with planting them. I probably plant way more than I need to just because I have so many. But they do okay.
So do any of these seeds need to be stratified or?
A lot of the natives do. A lot of the annuals do not. All the ones that I have here probably don't, except for the hollyhock would probably benefit from being stratified. So some of them need to have time where they freeze thaw outside, and some of them need light, and some of them need like to be messed up a little bit or like scarification. So it will say on the packs what needs to be done with them, but more of the native need that cold stratification where it gets cool and warm and cool and warm and wet and dry, and then they can germinate better. There's various methods you can use. Like you can use an old like milk carton and put some soil at the bottom and put a bunch of seeds in there and then just leave it out all winter. And some moisture will get into the top of the milk carton and they'll just grow over the winter time. Maybe they're doing their stratification thing and then in the springtime a baby plant will be growing in there. So that's kind of a nice way. Or you can put them with like a moistened paper towel in a baggie in your refrigerator for about 6 weeks, and you can often achieve the same results. Yeah. I know they all have their different requirements. Yes.
Can you grow them inside?
Can you grow them inside? You can. It's helpful to have grow lights though to get them started, and ideally starting them inside works, but they probably will need more sun. So starting inside is great. They probably won't last a season on the inside, but good question.
I think that's what that one's doing. He's planting it inside in a bowl.
Yeah, I think they're working on separating the parts. They may be working on that indoors though. Yeah. There's a process in the Floret videos that's called winnowing, that you're separating out all those little parts, and it's kind of neat. I might make a little bit of a mess, but I'm gonna show you. So in the bottom of this bowl is a bunch of celosia seeds. They just fall all over the table, and then I scrape them into a bowl. But if you rub the bottom of them, you'll end up getting seeds that come out and some of the little other parts. But if you kind of move it around and blow, it's called winnowing, all those little tiny parts will just fly. That's why it's nice to do it outside. And then you'll end up with a bunch of seeds at the bottom and all the other parts are gone. So it's kind of fun. It's cool to see all that stuff just go, woo. Yeah.
Are you going to have us work with some of your?
Yes. If anyone would like to winnow a little bit, you can come on up
Yeah.
here afterward. And I have a bunch of seeds you can take with you too if you're interested. Yes.
So, when do the seeds? What type of season do the seeds fall?
Usually toward the end of their bloom time. So, I mean, if I planted them indoors and they were blooming in early summer, it could be June when the seeds start falling down. But for these, I harvested later, so right now is a great time. Yeah, you're welcome to take some with you. I have 5 different varieties of things you can take with you if you're interested in growing next season. So I think this came from a movie. If you build it, they will come. My whole goal is to just plant things that I love to see, things that all the critters around me will enjoy, and you end up with caterpillars in your yard, and you give them nectar sources, and you give them host plants, and then you get monarch butterflies hatching, which is really fun. And then the hummingbirds will come, and they'll make their little nests, and they'll collect all the lichen from the trees, and I have these anemone that bloom in the springtime, and the seeds come out with this little fluffy cottony stuff. And I'll see the hummingbirds like hovering and just collecting all that cottony stuff, and then they line their nests with it. And spider webs, they use those too. So it's neat to see the things if you don't have a perfectly manicured yard and you just allow the natural process to happen, how much of that stuff gets used. And then your cats will watch the birds too. And hope
The best flowers for the hummingbirds, is it that better for flowers or the nectar that you put out for them? What's the best?
I think it's all great. I don't tend to use nectar because the raccoons usually get into my nectar. So my way of attracting them is just planting flowers that they like. And they tend to like a lot of red flowers. Yeah, Carolyn.
You could consider putting nectar out early in the season.
Yeah.
Start migrating
On the border seasons.
when your plants start to bloom. That's what I do. Is then I do. Oh, and then when they're migrating, weave it. You see the gap.
It's yeah.
Oh, and get it. Yeah. Yeah. I usually have nectar up. We have a place in Wisconsin we usually go to, and they're nesting somewhere around there, and there are tons of hummingbirds. And because I don't live there full time, I don't have the garden that I would typically have to support them. So I put out nectar for them when we're up there. But at home, I have canna lilies and spigella, and they visit the dahlias. They like all sorts of things. Salvia, they really love salvia. That's a great attractor for hummingbirds.
Now, do you make your own nectar for? How long is that good for?
It doesn't last very long, probably just a few days, 2, 3 days, and it starts to get funky. So I don't make a ton of it, or I make a bunch and I put it in the fridge, but you only fill it up with like a half to a 1 cup, depending on how many you have around, and then you clean it out, and it's a process, which is probably why I don't do it, because I'm not very consistent, life. Yeah. Here are some tools to have that are great for gardening. Gloves are always great. So I love my hands are dirty whether I have gloves on or not. But this little soil knife is an amazing tool for digging out plants or pulling out weeds. That hula hoe, if you have in-ground gardening, is great for removing weeds in the center. It has kind of I don't know if you can see, but it's like a rectangle shape, and you just drag it along and it pulls the plants out that you don't want.
Do you leave the wheat there, or do you disperse it?
I usually put them on a pile, and at the end of the season or in the spring, it just turns to dirt, and I spread them around. As long as you pull them before they go to seed, because you don't want like all the weed seeds everywhere. And if you stay up on your weeds, that you really won't have that many. It's when they're allowed to go to seed and that spreads everywhere, then you've got a mess to deal with.
Do you find like the garden fabric or anything is good for it, or is that?
I have tried that, but honestly, they'll grow underneath, they'll grow through any crack. And then you have to deal with the garden fabric. So I kind of stopped using all that stuff.
Most of mine are this year.
Cardboard. Cardboard is a good way to. It's a little slippery though when it's wet is the only thing, I think. I don't know.
I killed huge slash.
Oh yeah, if you're trying to kill out a huge area of grass and change it over to something else, cardboard is a great way. Yeah. And then just kind of layer it with leaves and soil and all that and take the tape off. Yeah. Got to be okay with probably getting wet and dirty. Probably need a stack of ibuprofen because something's going to hurt you at some point. It's that repetitive work where you're like, oh, my elbow or, oh, my back, It happens multiple times a year for me. Sunscreen is always a good idea. Wear your sun hat. Water. Drink lots of water. Stay hydrated. And I think I kind of alluded to this. Choose things that you want to see. It's your garden. What do you want to see? Do you want to see flowers? Do you want to cut things? Do you want to share them with everybody? Natives are great for adding ecological balance. Yes.
Okay, we have a lot of flower gardens on our property.
Yeah.
And we have a sprinkler system, but my wife wants to water them 24/7. Is there any way to put into the ground to keep moisture in the ground?
You can use drip hoses.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great way.
Any way to keep the soil moist without the water going into the soil more? It's just,
Well, that's where you want the water to be because you really don't have to water the actual foliage. It's the soil and the roots pull up the water from the soil. So that's exactly where you want it is in the soil and in the ground. And mulch. Mulch can keep things moister. So mulch or leaves or...
we have an enormous compost thing.
Yeah. Get the compost underneath your plants too, as long as it's not diseased.
Yeah. Yeah, we was just wondering it, but watering it by hand because we're having this drought thing.
Yeah, it was very, very dry this year. I found that I was just barely keeping things alive, really.
When it adds $100 for your water deal.
It does. I know. And that's usually just to keep things alive. But until it rains, things, I've found they just don't tend to flourish until there's actual rain from the sky. So you do your best on keeping things.
Rain from the sky is better than your water.
I've always find that to be true. And I don't know what magic it is, but it is Mother Nature, and whatever is provided from the sky must have something in it that plants love. Because I can water for months in a drought and things barely look alive. And it will rain one day, and the next week, everything's in bloom. It's amazing. Yeah.
We're just thinking about putting some rain buckets, or
Yeah.
things.
That's a good way to
Fifty
collect
bucks
crayons.
gallons. You know, I was amazed. We had a big bucket and it was filled up and was one day, you know, like,
Yeah.
whoa.
You can collect some nice rain to put on your crops later.
Mosquito junks.
Yeah, that is one thing you have to watch out with rain barrels, because mosquito larvae can get in there. Yes.
The mulch, doesn't it have bacteria, fungus, mulch?
It can. Some does and some doesn't. Yeah. I don't tend to mulch a lot. Very thin, just something to cover it up to maybe hold a little moisture in. But yeah, I don't put like inches of mulch, because I think that's when it happens more. It holds so much moisture that you end up with mold. Yeah. Yeah.
Doing it every year.
Yeah, and you can probably every other, sometimes even every third, or if you're just doing a real thin layer, every year is probably okay. I do think certain kinds tend to be more moldy than others. Yeah, yeah. Just let your leaves fall in there and call it good. Yeah.
Gonna bring
Yeah, we will bring some people forward. You know, I love to share flowers and seeds and the joy of flowers with people around me. So if anyone would like to come over, work a little bit with seed separating, I have some envelopes and some instructions on how to grow each flower, but there are 5 different types here.
I'm not gonna do seed separated today.
Not today? That's all right. Thanks for coming anyway. There are also some books if you want to see. Maybe I'll have maybe just 3 people come up and start, and we'll kind of show you how to do it. So this flower is actually this one right here. It's called a scabiosa. And then these are the dead flower heads. And if you just kind of pull them off, and there's not, on this one, there isn't a whole lot of extra pieces. So if that's something you think you might enjoy next year, just take the instructions. I'm going to have you scooch back just a little bit more. Thank you. And then you can write the name of the flower and put some in your envelope. And these are marigolds. These are actually pretty easy to come apart. I'm going to have you do me a favor if you don't mind. Do you want to hold the microphone? Okay. So I'm going to pull the top of the flower petals off and then sort of peel this side away, and all the seeds will fall into the bowl. And then those may be seeds for next year. So you can sort of play around with that a little bit.
You do get a lot of seeds for one.
Yes, there's a lot of seeds. Yeah. And then this next one here is a hollyhock. Yes, they're really beautiful. All right, I'm going to give it back to you. Okay. And this one, we're going to pull the outside of the petal off and then just let these little circular seeds fall into the bowl. And then you can grab some of those, put those in an envelope. And then the next one here are cosmos, and these are already separated. When I was working in with the 5th graders at Worthington Estates Elementary, they were collecting seeds for me, so they did the work for us. Yeah, they're just little, yeah.
Can you put different flowers in one or different seeds? Like
Sure, if you don't care what's in there, you can just put them all in one envelope and then sprinkle them in the soil. Some of them take different things than others, so that's why it might be nice to separate them. But all of these will grow well after the frost is done. So probably toward the end of May, you can plant them. And the only one that might require something different will be the hollyhock, because that one works a little bit differently. Carolyn is featured in this book. Or no, it's your photo, right? Yes, yes. Yeah, or you just want to take a little handful and then share with the next person. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Aren't they cool? They're so fuzzy.
them. I'm gonna try these. Honey, come on, Doe.
So I don't know if we want to.
Grab an envelope for it.
And then if you didn't separate them or you want to write what they are, you can use a pen to label your envelope. And then if you want to know how to grow each one, you can grab my copies of the seed pack so you know how they work. And every other one is the exact seed, but this one could be any celosia. Yeah. Because it's hard to separate out these tiny black seeds. I don't know where I got them from. Any of them. I have a little suburban Worthington plot where I have a garden, and then I have a community garden space that I continue to make bigger every year, and then I have a garden space up in Gambier by Kenyon College because we do flower events there, and then I have a school garden that I work with 5th graders, so they keep growing.
Jill, you truly are. What?
A partner with Mother Nature. If you're not Mother Nature yourself, then
Thank you so much. It was wonderful.
Yes, sir. Thank you all for coming. Have a great day, everybody. Keep growing.